Hey geeks, welcome to another episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm glad you're all here, and I changed my background today because we're getting a heat wave, and I kind of wanted to show you where I live. So this beach right here behind me, I took this picture a number of years ago, and it's only a couple miles from where I could walk there if I really wanted to, but I'm too lazy for that. But I just want to kind of to show you summer's here, at least in America, and we're all looking forward to our COVID-free summer. Last summer kind of really sucked, so hopefully, at least in America, we can have a better summer. So I kind of wanted to start with a happy picture of the beach and people having fun and the sunsets. Sunsets here in San Diego. I remember when I first joined the Navy back when I was 19, and I remember standing in line in boot camp waiting to get food and watching the sunset, in the evenings, and I was just floored by the beautiful sunsets we have in San Diego, and we still have them. And so I have a lot. If you go to my photography site, there's a lot of pictures of beaches around this area because it's just so pretty here, especially in the the sun, the early evening times when the sun goes down. There was one time I was actually really close to this beach and I saw the sunset and I sat there going, I got to get my camera. I got to get my camera. And I ended up saying no, because a camera won't even capture what I'm seeing. So why even try? But anyway, I hope you're all doing well where you are. I know things are not going great in some parts of the world with COVID. I'll talk about that in a sec, but I'm really happy to see to have Shawn Wildermuth. Sorry, Shawn, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Here for our 27th show. So I'm really excited to talk with Shawn, all the stuff he's up to, including his filmmaking endeavors. That's going to be great. So I hope you all hang out and have your questions ready for Shawn, because this is your time to ask him questions and get feedback. So, India is still having, a terrible time with the COVID pandemic. And so I hope you'll support people in India by going to this link and donating money. When I first started talking about this, right after the show, I donated $100, and I challenged all the other software engineers out there, not in India, to either match or beat my donation. And people have been doing that, including some of my guests on the show. So I'm really happy that I'm raising some money to help out with the COVID relief in India. They're doing a really bad time, and they're having a really bad time, and the world needs to help them fix this, because this is a worldwide pandemic. It's not an American pandemic or an Indian pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic. We all have to solve it together. So please donate. Please listen to your local officials, and let's get this thing gone by the end of this year completely, so we can get back to going to conferences and doing more fun things. I can't wait till I go to my first concert. It's been so long. Anyway, I want to plug next Friday. This coming Friday is the world's first code quality and performance virtual conference hosted here on CSharpCorner by CSharpCorner Live. I'm super excited about this conference. I've been wanting to do this conference for over 10 years, so I'm really glad that Mahesh and the team and Simon and the team at CSharpCorner asked me to do this. And so it's going to be a really fun conference. I have awesome speakers lined up from all over the world. If you go to my blog, dotnettips.com, and even register for the conference, you can see all the topics. If you go to my blog, it'll list not only all the sessions and their descriptions, but it will list all the speakers and all their information too. And so I hope you go check that out and see the great line of speakers we have coming up, including the one guy at Microsoft I really, really wanted to get for this conference. And I nabbed him. He's going to be on towards the end before my keynote speech. And I'm really, really I'm really excited about this conference. And I hope you are too. So I hope you'll take some time out next Friday and watch some sessions or their whole thing. It's going to be 8 hours of lots of tips on how to make your code better and make it more performant. And performance is a big deal nowadays, especially in the cloud. And so we all have to think about that a lot. And so anyway, hope you'll join me and everybody else next Friday. I want to plug the Hello World Cookbook. I've been plugging this thing for over a year and a half now, and it's an idea I had a year and a half ago to try to raise some more money for the NGO that I visited in India the last time I was there, because these kids really, really need your help, especially right now during COVID and dealing with this horrible pandemic. I mean, the two founders of the Voice of Slum are so inspiring to me that, they came from the slums and they've been doing so much hard work to help the kids even pre-pandemic, but now they're, working overtime. So one way you can help support them is to go to their website and donate, or if you cook, if you have your own custom food recipes, you can donate to the helloworldcookbook.com. And 100% of the proceeds of this book will be donated monthly to the Voice of Slum. And but I have to tell you honestly that, if I don't get some more recipes really quick, this project's going to die. And I would really hate for this project to die because I didn't get enough recipes. So right now, I'm very, very low on recipes, and I need you to take a couple minutes and write down your recipes, no matter where you live in the world, and send them to me so we can get them in the book and start raising some money for the kids in India. And I'm really looking forward to going back to India and see how, the Voice of Slum is doing after, the money that we've been helping raise for the NGO. So please take some time out in the next week or so and send me your recipes. Just go to the Hello World Cookbook. I can't even talk this morning. HelloWorldCookbook.com and submit your resume, your food recipe, or you can sign up to be a food taster, what I call a unit tester. And I need some help with graphics and editing too. So there's lots of ways to help this endeavor. But if I don't get enough recipes by October, the project's dead. So I hope you'll help support the project. All right. So with that, I'm going to introduce our guest. Shawn Wildermuth has been tinkering with computers and software since the VIC-20 back in the early 80s. I don't even know what that one is. He's a Microsoft MVP since 2003. He's also involved as Microsoft as the ASP.NET Insider and Client Dev Insider. He's an author of over 20 Pluralsight courses, written 8 books, international conference speaker, and one of the wilder minds. He's released his first feature film, which I really like to talk to him about that, called Hello World, the film, and which you can go check out now. So welcome, Shawn.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Excited.
It's great to see you.
Though you saying you don't know what a VIC-20 is makes me feel really old. I'm like, what? What?
I actually started doing programming in the 80s, but, where I still saw some of the card punch stuff going on, and even the big tape machines, right? And actually, the one place I worked when I was in the Navy here in San Diego, I actually played computer games on during lunchtime on reel-to-reel tapes.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really
that's crazy.
Interesting. That the whole game was on reel-to-reel tape.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I guess we're both two old farts, in this industry, and have seen it all pretty much, I guess.
Yeah, I mean I heard 2 people talking about, oh my God, I'm getting old. I had the original iPhone and I wanted to just punch him in the throat. I'm like, oh Jesus.
I was going to show it. I like to show geek humor, and I couldn't find the one I really wanted today. But I was going to show this ad that I have. I don't know when it's from, but they were selling a 38 megabyte hard drive for $3,300.
Yeah.
That's crazy cost, right? If you think about how cheap disk space is nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, especially with the thumb drives and stuff, it's so cheap now.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's why nobody deletes the files anymore. Now you have the cloud. Once they go in the cloud, they'll never go away. So
That's
don't
the
keep.
hope.
If you do something illegal, don't put it in the cloud. Okay.
What happens in the cloud stays in the cloud.
The FBI will get a hold of it somehow, and you're SOL. But hopefully, nobody's watching the show is doing anything illegal. So, everybody, please send in your comments so we can ask Shawn during the. Oh, here's one. Simon had one. When was your first episode stream? The end of September. I mean, you should know this. Are you talking to me or Shawn? Simon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe he went to the bathroom.
Well,
for me, it was the end of September, right, Shawn? Too many S names in one show. Simon. Yeah.
And you were doing this weekly, right?
Yeah, most weeks. We don't do it every week, but most weeks. I would say 3 weeks out of the month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So everybody watching, we're not going to have a show next week because I'm going to be recovering from the conference. So if I have to host a conference for 8 hours, I'm taking the next day off. So no show next week. Yeah.
Lazy.
I'm so lazy.
That's lazy.
Hey, if I was in my 20s, maybe I could do that, but I can't do it anymore.
Now that you're in your 30s, yeah.
Yeah.
So until more questions come in, I wanted to talk about you living in San Diego because I feel like people that live in San Diego are just too lazy to know what weather is.
We are, and I'll tell you a couple of funny stories when I talk about the weather in San Diego. One of the reasons I've been in San Diego since I've been 19 is because, the weather here is the best in the country, and for most of my life here, I don't understand what the weather people do here, right?
Yeah.
They just look outside. Yep, it's going to be nice. I mean, what more do you have to say, really? And so one of my favorite comedians is Louis Black.
Yes.
He's great. I've seen him a couple of times live. I mean, he makes me laugh so hard my stomach hurts, But the first time I saw him here at a theater downtown, one of the first things he said, because at that time when I first saw him, pretty much the entire country had crappy weather except for us, And he came out on stage going, "San Diego, you live in an effing weather bubble." He didn't say effing. What do your weather people do?
Exactly.
I'm sitting there going, exactly. And then sometime after that, one of our local channels bought this weather van and they were promoting it as the weather van. And it's going to tell us all this stuff we need to know. And I'm sitting there going, for what? We don't have weather really. It rarely rains here. It's sunny every day pretty much. The medium temperature by where I live is like 70, 72 all year. So yeah, what do the weather people do here? Nobody understands.
No.
Right?
No. That's why an anchor man,
the
weather guy, was from San Diego because or doing the weather in San Diego. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, I thought that was great because what do they do here? I mean, it's got to be the easiest job ever is to be a weather person here. Yeah.
I would guess. Yeah. Or meteorologist.
Oh, where do you live again?
Atlanta.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've
been through our airport.
Yep. Yeah. I spoke there a year or two or a couple of years ago.
At the code camp?
I spoke at the code camp. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
that's the last time I saw you.
Yeah. I think that was one of the last times I spoke, actually.
We're actually, our call for speakers is open right now. We're trying to have an in-person in October.
Cool.
Hopefully COVID will cooperate, but we're giving it the old college try. So if anyone does want to speak there, feel free to go to atlantacodecamp.com and you can sign up there.
Yeah, well, we'd feel better if we could get some of the anti-vaxxers off their butts and go get a shot,
That's a whole big topic.
I know.
I mean,
and I don't want to talk about it here. So the one question I wrote down for you, because, I've been following you for, a long time. And where are my questions? There they go. Since no one else is asking a question yet, I would, this is tongue in cheek, but, do you just write and make videos all day? Is that just all you do now?
Pretty much.
So you're all self-funded by Pluralsight, and all you do is write and do videos.
Yeah.
Because it seems like you release one or both every single day.
No, it's not quite that. Maybe once a week. But I'm very lucky that my courses are fairly popular on Pluralsight. That's given me the opportunity to try to give back to the community more. I do some work with some nonprofits, as well as I'm always learning something new and trying to turn that into, either one of my new coding short videos, or if it's a little longer topic, and sort of pitching it as a course. I do individual consulting still, but it's I probably only spend about 5 hours a week on that.
Yeah.
That's not nearly what used to be my bread and butter. Now training has really become it. And it's I'm really lucky that I sort of fell into this at the right time. The honest answer about training is that I was a good developer for the first 20% of the project, and then I wasn't. I lose focus.
Yeah.
And so being able to help people by teaching them or by helping companies with planning is sort of the sweet spot. That's where I've realized my gifts are, more than just getting out there and coding. Though I still code almost every day, doing something, because I still have a passion for it. It's just that the end of the project was always a killer to me.
The end of projects are the worst. 90% of the stuff gets done in the last 10%, of the project, right?
Yeah. Every time.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And my second part of the question is, how do I get a gig like yours? But now I realize it's because, I was too much of an a-hole when I was talking to Pluralsight about courses, because I wanted to do courses I wanted to do, and they weren't playing ball. But, you kind of given me some inspiration. I think I'm going to email them Monday and go, hey, you want to play ball now that, I'm used to speaking, virtually now? And because one of my things was I just don't like speaking to a computer, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason I like my show is because I get to talk to somebody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just don't like talking to a computer. But, COVID has kind of made me used to that now, and, to me, unfortunately, but that's the way it is now. So, yeah, I think I'm going to contact them again, and see if they want to do some like code quality, sessions and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I'm not sure what they have on their plate for content, but it's certainly worth, if anyone's interested in teaching, because it is for me, it's a particular problem. Like I got into software sort of accidentally because I love just finding the solution. If anyone's seen the show House, I know this goes internationally. Some people might not have, but in every predictable episode of the show House, he would have a moment of epiphany where everything sort of came together, and that is the best way I've ever seen described what coding for me is like.
Yeah,
it's finding that moment of like, oh, I finally understand, or I can finally put all these little pieces together. And what happened when I started doing training some 20 years ago is that I realized that there is a puzzle of how you teach people, and that was and still is an interesting problem for me. Like, the first course I taught, I made a mistake the first day of the 3-day course, and I kept on doing it because I realized it was this great teachable moment. Like, it was a mistake the first time I taught it, and then every other time I would go, oh no, look what happened, and then be able to teach them why it happened. And so it became this, became this thing that I was really interested in figuring out. That same thing happened when I wrote my first book. Is like, oh, this is different than sitting down with somebody.
It
Having to
is.
sort of explain it in a way and build it to where it's readable and informative, not just, because of that, I feel really lucky that I've had those opportunities. That some of it's been because my career has been chaotic because of this lack of focus. I never really spent more than 2 years at a company.
Yeah, I usually don't either. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd go in, help with a project, get burned out, and go look for some other company.
That's pretty much my deal. I just left a job I worked on for 24 months. So that's kind of my sweet spot, I guess.
Yeah.
I do the work, I do the architecture, and then when it gets boring, I'm out. Yeah. But speak about teaching. Some of the stuff that you get from teaching, I get too, and I taught at the university here for close to 18 years. And
wow.
I have to admit that, one of the things I really miss about teaching is, it kept me grounded more, kept me, it made me better at explaining things to beginners, right? Because I had to do that every week.
Yeah.
And the further I came up, the harder that becomes, right? And so teaching was a way for me to keep that, still being able to talk to beginners, right? And help them, in their career and make them to be better developers. And I do really miss that part of teaching because, there's no money in doing that anymore, at least here. And so I just kind of gave up on it. It wasn't worth my time anymore. So
it's one of those things that, like, right now I'm updating an old course of mine that teaches the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like, this is what an editor is at that sort of level. And it's way harder than teaching somebody just a new skill in development, like figuring out how to put these topics in where you can't refer to other tech topics as an example. It really is it's really a difficult problem to solve. Pluralsight is letting me reshoot that whole course because the whole world has changed in 6 years, of course, and the basics like HTML. And so I'm looking forward to that challenge again, to find a different way into that. Luckily, we have some better tools than we did back then.
So
just have people download VS Code and not have to show them how to start a web server or anything like that is a big help.
So have you felt, because I feel this with books, and so I want to kind of see if you feel this with Pluralsight courses, is that, one thing I talk a lot about is, our world changes every day, but now it's changing at such a rapid point, speed that, books almost are irrelevant by the time they come out, right? Because there's so much lag time in publishing a printed book, right?
Yeah.
And now with Pluralsight, I mean, you can go do a Pluralsight course, and 3 months later, it's completely changed. Like, especially if you do something in Azure, because they're constantly changing stuff in Azure.
Sure.
So have you felt that with your courses?
To some extent.
Yeah.
I built a number of my courses so that I could update them. Like, one of the magic things with video versus a book is getting it back out there with a patch is relatively painless versus a book reprinting and having and so I sort of planned for that at the beginning, like that things are going to change. I've actually spent the last about year and a half updating most of my courses, and most of them have been little patches of, we're not using that version anymore. The concepts, for the most part, are still pretty solid. It's just some of the details that we're getting people caught up with. It's like, well, what? My code doesn't look like that when Visual Studio generates it. Okay, we need to patch that. So it is and it isn't, especially in the web development space. There's always new things, but 99% of the people are still on, I honestly, I've been thinking a lot about jQuery. So many websites still rely on it so heavily, but I'm not sure that I would suggest it for new development. Like, and what do you do instead? And do you teach and talk about and use just the DOM operations in JavaScript? Do we really need some of the things that jQuery was so crucial in the early web? Do we still need it? But so many companies are still so heavily relying on it. One of the most common questions I ever get is, how do I use my Angular plugin? I'm sorry, my jQuery plugin in my Angular app. And I want to go, I understand why you're asking this, and you need an answer, and this is how to do it. Is there a better way? But often it's this one-off Angular, I'm sorry, I keep saying Angular, jQuery plugin that does this very specific thing that this website's relied on for 15 years. And asking them to, rewrite that from scratch is often not trivial.
Yeah.
And so that's, especially in the web space, we live in super old and super new. I was working with a client recently and helping them mix their MVC code with their web forms code with their classic ASP code, like in one project. They had them in like 3 different projects.
Yeah.
And, honestly, old code is good code. If those pages are still working, is there huge benefit in rewriting them from scratch? And often there isn't.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be one of these people that just are like, everyone should still be doing COBOL or, anything like that. But I think we, as developers, we tend to think, okay, we've got all this technical debt. Let's clear the table and let's start again. Let's do green field development. And what happens is that's a luxury that most companies don't have. They just don't have the money or the time, or we're not going to have a new feature for 15 months, and you're going to promise that all of our old features will be there in 15 months. It's a really, really hard thing for most companies that even if they're doing really well, can really take on. And so, but as developers, that's kind of what we want. We don't want to live with other people's decisions.
Right.
So I think getting comfortable with that is one of the things I try to preach to people is, someone's going to have to support your code when you're gone, and you're going to have to support someone's code that has left.
Right.
That's
why I make my, I tell people all this time, especially in conferences, is that, when I write code, especially as a consultant, at the level that I'm at nowadays, I always say that I try to make sure I write it that even a beginner could understand it. Right. And maybe they might not grasp, exactly how I'm doing this Lambda or something, but generally they can pretty much grasp what the code is doing. And that's kind of what I write for is to make sure that everybody, in the team will be able to understand what I'm doing, because I'm not going to be there in 2 years. Right. Or it's even worse when I'm consulting, right? I'm going to be gone tomorrow if they decide they don't have any money anymore. Right. So I want to make sure I leave a legacy that people aren't sitting around going, gosh dang, Dave wrote this shitty code and now we're stuck with it. And, I don't want anybody saying that about my code. And so, I do take some time to make sure that, I keep to the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And that's kind of what I do. If it's too complicated, it's got to be broken down or refactored or something, right? So anybody can understand it pretty much for most of the code. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We kind of have I have a philosophy in the Wilderminds, my company. And that is when we go work with a client, is that we go in the beginning saying, we don't want you to need us.
Right.
Like we would rather sit down with you and make sure that your team can build this rather than building it for you.
Right.
We're happy to. We'll do it, but we'd rather you retain the skills than to pay us too much money build it and hopefully, support it. And,
Hmm.
and I worked for a lot of companies where sort of at the end of the day, they ended up needing these consulting companies
Hmm.
that stayed around forever. And I just realized that because of my flakiness or my my odd temperament, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to feel like I could leave a company in a better place than I found them in the beginning, and that they could succeed without me, and I could be proud of that. And
Hmm.
I got a little money to help pay my mortgage 1 month, and that's great. But needing that to bill one more hour in that company to make sure that I was still around in 6 months just didn't interest me.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's unfortunately too many companies get stuck with those not great consulting companies. Is their whole goal is to make sure you need them all the time so they can keep milking money out of you. And
yeah.
that's a sure sign of a not good consulting company, right? Because that shouldn't be their goal, right? The goal is to do a project and leave, right? Not
Yeah.
stay there for 10 years.
No, there's
Yeah,
some companies that they're they're really there to provide bodies.
sure.
And
Yeah,
so that's a little different, but
that's different. Yeah.
ones that really do consulting, what I like to call, high value consulting or advice. Most of the time I spend with clients is around a conference table, or these days on a Zoom meeting. It's
Mhm.
not sitting writing code. It's
Right.
walking through their code or showing them how to do things, because I think that's where the value is. They're investing in their employees, not in me, and I'm
Right.
fine with that. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Yeah. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said earlier, a couple minutes ago, I'd like to point out, because maybe this is why you're doing it. But so you said something about, you make sure your Pluralsight courses are easily updatable, right? And one
Yeah.
of the things that I preach and practice all the time is, making sure your code is updatable or reusable, right?
Yeah.
And if you just code 90% of your code that way, you're going to have a much better project in the end, because how much code has never changed ever since the first time it's written? Like
Right.
hardly any, right? So if you don't pre-do that work, which isn't a lot of work once you get used to it, but if you don't pre-do that work, you're going to be really in a hole 6 months, a couple of years from now.
Yeah, those sort of one-offs can really end up hurting you, even if
Yeah.
they hurt the schedule in the beginning. You may remember back, but I sort of cut my teeth on, COM and C++,
Yeah, me
and
too. Well, calm. Yeah.
you had to plan what you were doing very carefully,
Hmm.
because the cost of changing a line of code was
Hmm.
expensive,
Hmm.
because it was so easy to get it wrong, frankly.
Right.
We're now in a place where changing a line of code is relatively cheap.
Hmm.
Um, and so making your code, spending a lot of time bulletproofing your code in the beginning is somewhat a wasted effort. I mean, the whole refactoring movement was sort of based on that idea.
Hmm.
But that does mean that you need to be thinking more modularly and less
Hmm.
coupled, so that
Hmm.
you can make these changes without them being, the thread that undoes the entire sweater, right? Because
Yeah.
that's I think that's what you're talking about in this sort
Hmm.
of preparing your code for change, because we want our code to change. In fact, I
Right.
think that I have this sort of idea, and I don't have any data to back it up, is that TDD or unit testing really comes out of the idea that code is relatively cheap to change.
Hmm.
What unit testing gives us isn't testing the code we write, it's testing the code we change.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
regression testing is what unit testing is about to me. It's not about that the code I wrote the first time works in the way I expected, because I wrote the test as well.
Right. Right.
That it'll work. Like,
Hmm.
I'm pretty confident. It's a year down the line when someone makes what they think is an innocent change, the unit test is trying to catch that. And so I agree with your sentiment a lot. Uh, I think we end up being in a place where, especially younger developers and some older developers, are so afraid of making a mistake or getting
Hmm.
caught up in, oh my God, I had a bug. Yeah, you will. Like, that's okay.
Everybody has bugs.
Yeah. Everyone makes it, you know.
Yeah, we all make mistakes. Yeah.
In my career, I have hitched my horses to the wrong wagon many a time, or hitched my wagon to the wrong horses. I got my metaphor backwards.
Yeah.
It's what you do when you know, it's what you learn from those mistakes that happens, not the reverse, you know. I love the web, I love Microsoft products, etc. But I thought object spaces was going to be the next thing, and I thought Oslo was going to change the way we did everything. Like all these projects that failed in huge ways.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that probably the one thing that I got pretty well known for, Silverlight, I didn't mean to hitch my wagon to. And I sort of fell into that, and I looked like a genius at the time.
Yeah.
Even though I was like,
I liked
oh,
it. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's what you do during those moments of mistakes that those are the teachable moments. And if you don't make the mistakes, you're never going to learn. If you're just copying code and hoping that no one notices,
right.
I think that's the much more dangerous. It's a much more dangerous piece. When I've hired developers, my goal has always been to get them to say, I don't know, because there's nothing more dangerous than a developer who is willing to bluff his way.
That's actually one of
his or her way, I should say.
When I talk about interviewing in my book and in conference sessions, that's exactly what I say. I want developers to tell me they don't know something, right? Because that's a great sign. They at least admit what they don't know so they can learn. But, you know, those of you who have, you know, read my writings or watched me speak, I mean, almost everything I'm passionate about, I've done wrong, right? You know, I'm passionate about those things because I screwed that up and I found a better way of doing it. And I'm trying to keep you from screwing up like I did, you know? And like, I was just thinking about, like, one time I was speaking, I forget where it was, and someone came into me and I was doing my coding standards talk. And there's one thing I talk about in there that I guess someone has seen my talk before. And he goes, Dave, I just talked to a bunch of MVPs and not a single one knows about that tip you tell us in your talk. And I go, exactly. That's why I tell it, you know, because it's so important, but nobody uses it. But it's a safeguard, you know, to make sure your code doesn't fail. And those are the things I talk about, you know, because like I said, I've screwed up and I found out a better way of doing it. And that's what I talk about most of the time. Yeah.
And the reality is that, you know, I don't know as much as people think I know. Right?
Yeah, me
I don't
neither.
think any of us do. You know, I've been at clients where they're like, would you explain how you do dynamic Angular? And I'm like, I'm sure I did it once. Let's find out. Like, having the willingness to be in front of people and not know, I think is something I look for in people, and something that I'm happy that I'm willing to look like a fool sometimes. You know, I do a lot of live coding when I do talks, because I want people to see that everyone makes mistakes while they type. You know, something like pair programming with 50 students in a class, when they go, you missed a semicolon. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Smart ass.
I know. Yeah. I hate it when people call out my spelling mistakes. I just hate it when people do that. I know I can't spell. Programmers can't spell. Stop pointing it out. You know, you don't need to stop my talk and say I misspelled a word. You know, come on. You can tell me afterwards, but not in front of, 300 people. Come on.
I'm okay with it.
Maybe I have a pet peeve about spelling because I suck at it.
Yeah. There's a great plugin to Visual Studio Code. I think there's one for Visual Studio too that will do spell checking while you type. So essentially, just looks for it inside quotes.
Yeah. The tool that I use, which spell checks everything, not only parameters, names, but comments, everything, is GhostDoc. From submain.com.
Oh yeah.
GhostDoc to me has the best spell checker, and it's free. And so that I've used GhostDoc for longer than I can remember to document my code. And now it has a spell checking thing in it that's just awesome.
I didn't know they had added spell checking. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, it's really good. Of course, the enterprise version I use is a little bit better, but yeah, you can spell check your entire project, and it'll come out in the little window where the error window is and tell you where all your spelling mistakes are.
Nice.
You can go, because I tell people all the time is once you get a misspelled parameter or method name, it's really hard to change that if it gets in production, and now you're going to be left with, this misspelled thing forever, and it's a perception, I guess.
I do. There was a miscapitalization in an early version of the .NET framework that stayed all the way to 3.5 because it's expensive to change.
Yeah.
When the world relies on your code.
Right. I know. So that's why I always run spelled. I mean, GhostDoc is running all the time, and whenever I do something wrong, it tells me immediately that I did it wrong. And the cool thing that it does is you can actually, if you have a word, like there's many words it doesn't understand, especially in programming. And so you can actually, ignore a word and make that apply to, just the solution or to your user dictionary, right? Nice. So like, especially when I'm working in consulting, I always make sure that anything I find misspelled in their projects, I add it to the solution. I don't add it to my user dictionary, right? So they can have the same ability to have that word spelled properly in their code and stuff. So, yeah,
that's amazing.
So I don't know if that's in the free version, but when Serge, who took over that program from another guy a long time ago, one of the mandates when that guy sold it to Submain is that they have to provide a free version, and so they've always done that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So all of you out there, go get it. It's free. It'll make you look better.
The semantics it uses to build XML docs is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So nobody has questions.
Nobody.
I know a lot of people were excited about your session, and no one's asking any questions yet.
They're afraid of me. This is happened before.
I get the same thing. People are afraid to ask me questions too. I don't know why. I think I'm pretty nice about it most of the time, or I'll just ignore you, So we kind of talked about consulting. Let's see. So you have a whole list of topics here. So we only have a few minutes left anyway. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Azure for small companies?
Sure. Azure feels like, in a lot of ways, it's built for being the big iron for big companies,
Right.
And I work with a lot of small companies, fewer than 20 employees and that sort of thing. And what I found in talking with them is by looking at a couple of the services that can really help them, instead of getting caught up in the just the morass of how many services are there, which I think are great. Don't get me wrong, but for small businesses, focusing on things like app services, hosted databases, and even Docker deployment through app services, not Docker deployment through Docker hosting,
right.
Can get a lot of these companies to stop trying to host and run their own data centers, and that can actually save them a lot of money. But the challenge there is this sense of control, because one of the things that I find with a lot of small companies is they're so used to, like, well, this is how we set up IIS, and we have a Windows box here. And the idea of sort of packaging up just their code and handing it to something and it'll magically host it, it is a big barrier that I like to describe to them in a kind of a specific way. So back in the day, in programming, we used to do assembly because we wanted to get everything out of our code, and it was really hard. Really hard to write good assembly, especially on a large scale. And so C and C++ and other languages like it, higher level languages were written, but we still wanted to manage memory because it was hard to have some system manage memory. So we gave up a little performance for the benefit of being able to write code faster and easier and readable. And this has continued up. And I feel like we're at the point where we're ready to give up control of the OS. Right? This is the next sort of venture of, I don't care how this is hosted. I just want my code to run and my code to run predictably. And that's kind of where the cloud is right now, is that I know you want a virtual machine because you're used to that. You're used to having control of the whole machine. But giving up that control is way more freedom. Like not having to deal with your own patching, not having to worry about versioning, being able to be in your own little silo where, as long as you have, that you have full control over how your code is run, and who cares what OS is on it and what hardware that OS is on, and all those levels of indirection. And you can gain the benefits of scale if you need it with very little work. It's not waiting for Dell to ship a new server to you, right? It's just sort of magically there. And that, you can get some of the other benefits that were so outside of the realm of what small business could afford, like having global
data centers
to your websites.
That's
so,
global data centers.
And use things like CDNs if you're doing things like video or other things. And so I encourage small businesses to really look at these Azure features that can really help you without getting too inundated with just the sheer amount that's there. And that for the most part, you're going to spend less money, not more money. But often that means hiring someone, not me, an Azure person to come in and help you figure out how to only buy what you need. Because it's the problem with AWS, Azure, all of them, is that it's very easy to go, oh, you know what? When I had a data center, I had an 8-core, 16 gigabyte machine. And so that's what I think I need. And you super don't, and you super don't want the cost associated with it, my blog, which gets a decent amount of traffic, not a, certainly not, a huge amount, but I think it runs on 1 gig and with a shared CPU. Like the amount of actual work it does is remarkably little when you look at what it's just doing in this little piece.
Right. Yeah. And you only get charged what you use, right? You don't have a server sitting around doing nothing, during the nighttime, right? I worked at a company. I was the original development team for proflowers.com and
nice.
they when I first started working there, they had their whole, all their computers were in the floor underneath me. And we'd later moved to a colo, but back then they were all down there. And I think when the guy was taking me through that, I think he told me they were spending $250,000 a month just on electricity.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I put, no, this wasn't Flowers. This was Mitchell. And so, that company, those computers really weren't used at nighttime, right? They were only used during the daytime in America. That's when people did their business. I mean, we did some things like backups and things like that at nighttime, but generally the computers sat there doing nothing, and you're paying for that, Yeah.
You absolutely are. It's interesting. I worked at a company, NetSuite, a million years ago. And we were having outages every night, not every night, twice a week. We were having outages, and we could not figure what was going on. And it was because the cleaning crew was unplugging the server to plug in the vacuum. Someone literally stayed there until they figured out what happened.
I laughed so hard I knocked out my earbud.
Yeah.
That's funny.
You don't want to run your own servers.
So
an easy one.
Running out of time. Do you want to talk about your film?
Sure. I'll at least mention it. HelloWorldFilm.com is a film I've released on a bunch of platforms, Amazon and iTunes and Tubi and a bunch of places. It's available internationally as well, in a bunch of countries, 85 countries, I think. And it's telling the story of sort of my coming to terms with my own role in lack of diversity in software. That I'm sort of telling it from my perspective, but the goal of the film was always to get people excited about software development and to acknowledge the leaders that came before us. That, before I made this film, I didn't realize that the first 8 coders were all women. I didn't realize that the guy who invented the game cartridge was a black man, or that the guy that provided all the financing to create HP was a black man. Like, these are the shoulders that we stand upon, and I feel like I should have known better. And
I agree.
And so, I encourage you, of course, to go see the film. It's not I didn't make the film to make money, because documentary films never make money.
No,
so
not usually.
But I'm hoping that the more eyes that get to see it, maybe some eyes can be opened, or some people can be encouraged to get in this career, because that's ultimately what the film's about. The film is not about bashing anyone, really. It was important for me to talk about the life changing that this career can be, if only more people had access to it.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I'm going to check it out for sure, and I hope everybody else out there does too. Kind of, and I was thinking about that question this morning. It kind of made me think of. I think it's about 6 years ago. I wanted to make a film, but my film was because I've been such a huge proponent of community speaking. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't run a user group for 20 years and force myself to learn how to speak.
Sure.
And I would not be where I am. And so I think one of the most powerful tools to help your career, to me, is that. And so I don't know how many interviews I did, but all the conferences I spoke at for I don't know how long, I would interview the speakers there, and I would even interview, the people who organize those conferences. And, why do you do this? Because you don't get paid, right? So why do you do this? And to basically encourage other people to do it. So, for some reason that kind of fell to the back burner. I never did it. But now that talking to you and your film, I was going, maybe I should brush that off and look at those interviews again and see if I can work it into something I can use now that, we're going to get back to speaking in person soon, hopefully, because I encourage, everywhere I go and speak and write, I encourage people to go speak at your local user group, go speak at a code camp. It's going to be frightening at first. It was for me, but if you just keep doing it, you'll become a better speaker, a better communicator, and it will help your career.
It's interesting. I mostly agree with you. I think there are some people that speaking is never going to be something that's comfortable for them.
Sure.
And there are other ways to contribute. That I think for me, the most important part of it is community, whether that's your role as speaker, organizer, just showing up sometimes, talking,
being a volunteer.
Yeah. Or even, just showing up at the user group so that you're talking with other people that are in the same trenches as you are. All that helps.
Exactly.
And if you want to think about it career-wise, more connections you have, the better your career is going to be in general. Anyway, But we're a community that we, as all of us have been at cocktail parties where no one is interested in what we do for a living. It's nice to have that sense of community sometimes. So, I absolutely, if you're at all interested in getting better at speaking, I think you're exactly right. I just think there will be some people that your career isn't going to be hampered by your inability to speak in front of a group of 300 people. But there are other ways you can be involved in community.
Yeah. Well, my goal is just to have people to be comfortable speaking in front of their team.
Sure.
Right? That's because you have to do that, pretty much, and to get your ideas across and things like that. So, my thing with the speaking thing, it's just my minimum thing is just to speak to your team comfortably, you know, and not be shy, right?
Yeah.
So we've run out of time, unfortunately, but there's 2 questions I always ask at the very end.
Sure.
We know you code and do films and everything, but beyond that, what do you do for fun?
I wish I had a better answer. I play video games some, but I really make the films for fun. If I had to say what my, you know, taking cameras around, setting them up, and interviewing people, just really makes me happy. And figuring out the how to cut, 100 hours of footage down to 60 minutes is it's a challenge, and I want to rip out my hair most days, but that makes me happy. Editing
is the toughest part of putting together a video of any type. Yeah. Cool. That's kind of what I do. I'm an award-winning photographer.
Nice.
I do all kinds of artistic things, play guitar every weekend, so yeah, I keep kind of in the artsy thing. If I could make money at all that, I'd probably be doing that, but exactly. That's why I'm stuck here being a software engineer.
Yeah, when I got burned out, as burned out as you can be at 18, because I started my first job at 16, and so I grabbed my guitar and became a busker for a couple of years because I thought that's what I needed, and then I came back.
Yeah. So somebody did ask, what's a future course coming from you?
Right now, we're still updating old courses. So we don't have any new courses on the slate right now, but I'm hoping to have a new maybe Vue course or JavaScript course that's going to come out soon. We're continuing to update the ASP.NET core courses as they come in, but there's not been enough changes that we've decided to, sort of dig into any new topics yet. A lot of people have asked me for Blazor, but that's just not something that I'm that interested in. So there's so many people that want to do it. It's probably not going to come from me. But Pluralsight has a bunch of new Blazor courses. So if that is something that interests you, it's there.
And the URL for your film is?
helloworldfilm.com.
Okay. So everybody go check out his film. I'm going to do it this weekend or maybe next week while I'm looking for a new job, but yeah, check it out. And I'm really glad you came on the show. I hope you'll want to come back. And anytime you do want to come back, just feel free to reach out, and I'll fit you in. It'll be really easy. I know you're super popular, so it's going to be really easy to fit you into the schedule. So
I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah. Thanks. And thanks for being here, and hang out afterwards if you want the numbers and stuff like that.
No worries.
And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Shawn. That was a really great talk. As most of my interviews go with my guests, it goes way too fast. I kind of wish this show was 2 hours, but it's the weekend and I want to do stuff too, right? So, thanks, Shawn. I hope he comes back sometime soon. If you guys want him to come back, make sure you make a comment or shoot me an email, and I'll get him back on the show. So everybody that's watching the show right now can get a free copy of CodeRush from Devexpress. Just go to devexpress.com/dotNetDave. CodeRush is the only refactoring tool I've ever used for Visual Studio. I love it. It makes me much more productive developer, and it makes me learn things. So why not check it out? It's free. My teammates where I used to work download it. They love it. And I hope you do too. So go check it out. So here's my Twitter poll, one of my recent Twitter polls. And I'm not going to get into this. I'm running out of time. I think I might do a new code rules about this, but I was curious, looking at now, I've said for the last month or so, I'm looking for a new job. And, I've been seeing a lot of tweets and job postings and I'm seeing some postings where, they're senior software engineers, to me, I feel that they probably haven't been around long enough to call themselves that. So I did a poll about it, and it looks like, 85% say that 5 years more. It's typically, where you land in the senior software engineering. So I'll do a new code rules about this, since I have a lot of stuff wrapped around looking for a new job right now, including this week. And speaking of this week's new code rules, that's exactly what this is about finding a new job. And I do want to talk about this because I'm in the middle of this right now. But I want to talk about something, at least for me and other people I've spoken to recently, find pretty frustrating. And that is dealing with recruiters has gotten so frustrating. It's, I haven't seriously looked for a job for 2 years now. And recruiters have always been tough to deal with, but oh my gosh, they're next to impossible now. And, I have lots of reasons why that is. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that during this section. But every morning I get up and I go to LinkedIn, and most of everything there is from recruiters. And I don't know what's going on, but I spend most of my time just dealing with recruiters that don't even really know what they're doing. And it's become very, very frustrating. And I'll give you some examples. And I don't know if you feel this way. I know it's probably different in other countries. I can only speak to my experience here in America. But if you do have frustrating experiences where you live, please contact me. I'd love to hear about them and maybe roll them into the next version of my interviewing book. Because in my interviewing book, there's a whole chapter of just dealing with recruiters. And a lot of the tips I'm going to give you today is from that chapter. Because I even go back to it and read my own words and listen to my own advice when I'm looking for a new job. But even I have to refresh my memory, because you shouldn't really be an expert in interviewing. If you are, that's a bad sign too, I think. So let's talk about some of the things. So how many of you got an email like this? David, I have the perfect job for you. And this is from a recruiter you've never spoken to before, ever in your life. But somehow they have the perfect job for you, right? I just don't get that concept. How do they know what I want? How do they know what I'm striving for in my career? They don't. And what's worse is, David, I have the perfect job for you. Please send me your resume. Right? They don't even know you. You don't even know them. And they automatically want your resume. So if a recruiter does that, don't do that. Because, and this is one of the tips in the book, is you never give a recruiter the Word version of your resume until you approve them to send your resume to a company for a specific position. Why? Because the bad recruiters, what they do, they immediately want your Word document. The reason is they want to put their logo at the top of it and start sending it out without even telling you. I've talked to many developers before that said that, recruiters have sent me to jobs that I didn't even know about. And these are the bad recruiters. And so if they immediately ask you for your Word document, don't do it, because you'll be stuck in this really horrible position. And so let's talk about some other things they do. I had a run-in with a recruiter, I think last year, maybe a year and a half ago. And I finally had it, because I get all these emails every day, going, I have the perfect job for you, perfect job for you. And yes, come to find out, those are bulk emails. If you go to my website, I have the actual graphic of the talk I had between me and another recruiter on LinkedIn. And where she admitted to me, that's exactly what they do. If you have .NET in your profile, they blast these emails out to you. And to me, that's not the way you do recruiting. At least in our industry, right? You don't do that. You go pick the candidate that's right for that job and contact them. You just don't send out, AI, driven emails. That's bad sign. Recruiters do that. So if your recruiter does that, don't do it. Don't use them. Yeah. What the hell? Why do they do this? Well, I have confirmation they do it. And anyway. And something recently I found out, and in this statement, I'm saying recruiting is broken, because I found out. So, when I wrote my book, I had a recruiter help me in this section where they told me how much money recruiters make, either if they place you full time or place you consulting. But recruiters only get paid if they actually place you, and even some places you have to stay there 90 days before they get paid. But now what I'm hearing is that these not great recruiters, for some reason, some companies out there are now giving recruiters bonuses just to get you through the programming test. And after that, the recruiters don't care because they get a bonus just to get you through the test. They don't care if you get the position. They just want the bonus for giving you through the test. That's wrong. This is broken if that kind of shenanigans is going on. And, to share something I do is, when I find out companies are doing things that aren't on the up and up, I stop using them, right? And so, for example, when I found out that, probably the top travel website in America is a website called Expedia. And I was approached by them to work for them. But then I found out they use these bad recruiters. And what I did is not pursue that job, of course. But the second thing I did is I never use Expedia ever again, right? Because if they're doing these practices, and they're hiring these candidates that probably are not qualified, I don't want to give them my data. Sorry. I know I'm being picky on that. But if I know they're doing shenanigans like this, Expedia is, I don't want to use them. And I haven't. I have not used Expedia ever since that day. So let me give you some tips on, basically how to deal with some recruiters. I'm going to go through this quick because we're out of time. But all these tips are in my book and in detail in my book. So if one of these tips hits you, go get a copy of my book on Amazon and you can read it up. But I'm not doing this new code rules to sell books. I'm doing this because I'm going through this right now and it's freaking frustrating. So anyway, here's tip number 1. They meet you before placing you. So, and I know before the pandemic, this was different. And what I used to tell people is they take you out to lunch and talk to you for an hour and really get to know not only who you are, who your personality is, what you're really looking for in your next job or in your career growth, right? If recruiters do that, keep them, don't let them go, because those are the good recruiters. They have a budget to take you to lunch. So just do it, right? And because to me, that's the only way they can really get to know you, right? So I know we're living through pandemic and things are changing. So do that virtually. I did it this week with a recruiter. The recruiter called me and we spent 50 minutes out of the 60 minutes just talking about me, not necessarily me, but, my background and, what I'm good at and, things I like to do for fun, those kind of things. That's the sign of a good recruiter that wants to do that and not just talk to you 10 minutes and get out, right? So make sure they do this one way or the other and not just blast emails to you, through an AI. They don't hide details from you. This drives me crazy because every time I get pretty much 95% of the time when I get a message from a recruiter, I have to type this out and ask them this. What company is it for? Send me the original job description, not what's on LinkedIn or not like what's on the website. Send me the original job description and send me the salary rate or contract rate. Those 3 things, right? I have to say this to almost every single email I get, and I'm tired of it, right? Because to me, they're hiding, one way that I can't get into it, but they're hiding things from you on purpose. And I just don't want to deal with recruiters like that. Just tell me who the company is, tell me the job description, and tell me the rate. If the rate isn't in the ballpark, there's no point in even talking, right? So I have to do this every time. And what I do is if I ask for those 3 things and they don't provide all 3 in the next response, I add them to junk mail forever. That's what I do. I won't deal with recruiters that do this kind of crap. They prepare you for the interview. Very, very important. You know, I was on an interview a week and a half ago, and the recruiter did this. And I even told him, I go, you're one of the good ones because you called me and prepared me for the interview. And, you know, preparing for the interview in person, of course, you know, involves proper dress code, but interview topics you're going to be asked, any tests you're going to be given with, and detailed information about the people you're interviewing with. So you know kind of their personalities. You should also look them all up on LinkedIn. I do it every single time. But they should call you the day before and prepare you for the interview, at least half an hour, right? That's a sign of a good recruiter. They stay connected when you have a job, right? I say this all the time, is if you start looking for a recruiter the day you get laid off or the day you leave a job, you've done it wrong, right? And so the good recruiters I know in San Diego, and I know very few now, unfortunately, but they take me to lunch all the time, right? Because they want to keep in contact with me. They want to keep their name in my head, and they have a budget for this. So the good recruiters will always stay in contact with you, even when you have a job. They just don't get you the job and that's it, right? That's not a good recruiter, because they want repeat business. I mean, that's how they make money. It's the only way they make money is by placing you. And a good recruiter also makes you look good. You know, software engineers are kind of talking about this. We're not great at spelling. You know, we're not great at doing resumes. Most resumes I see from software engineers are just terrible. And you know, we're not good at these things. So a good recruiter should make your resume look awesome, right? Because they're selling you, they're marketing you to a company. And if they just take your resume, stick their logo on it, they're not doing it. They're not doing their job, right? So one of the tips I have with this is, you know, once they do make your resume look great, get that resume back from them. And then that way you have a base for the next time you're looking for a job. Is, you know, a recruiter, you know, sanitized and made you look good. And now you just keep adding to that. That's why my resume looks good, I think, is because I've done that over and over again with recruiters in the past. And, you know, I know I'm way over time, and I tried to get through this quickly, but, you know, if the recruiters don't do these things, which I've just outlined, find another one, right? There's a bajillion recruiters out there now. There's no reason to stay with a bad one. There's so many out there. So just find another recruiter, you know, add that bad recruiter to your spam junk mail folder and go find another one. There's lots of them out there. Unfortunately, the good ones are really hard to find. All right. Whew. I'm out of breath. So like I said earlier, there's no show next week. I'm taking the day off because I'm going to be recovering from the Code Quality and Performance Conference on Friday. It's an 8-hour conference, starts at 7 a.m. my time and goes to 7 p.m. my time. And I really, really, really hope you join, because it's going to be a really fun conference. And I guarantee you're going to learn something. I'm doing the keynote at the very end, kind of summarize everything and give you some tips that I feel are super important to make sure you write good quality apps that your users love. I'm working on that keynote right now. Please be safe on COVID. I know not all of us, even America is not out of the woods yet, but, you know, please be safe. Please listen to your local medical professionals. And if you feel you want to help out, go give blood. You know, I donated blood last Sunday. I donate blood every 2 weeks. I mean, every 4 weeks. And every time I go there, I ask them how their blood supply is doing, and it's doing really bad. And even the manager I talked to last Sunday said it's bad all over the world. So, you know, please, if you're able to, which most of you are, go to your local blood donation center and donate blood now. They really need your blood all the time, but they really need it now because of dealing with COVID. Okay, so it'll make you feel good, and you get out of working any strenuous work for 24 hours. That's great for all of you husbands out there. So I do it every Sunday, and I reward myself afterwards by getting sushi at my favorite sushi place right next door to the blood bank, and right down the street from me. So make it fun. You know, do something fun. Reward yourself for donating blood. It's a good thing. You're helping your fellow human tribe members to be healthy. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Thanks for watching. Please email your suggestions to rockinthecodeworld@csharpcorner.com. whether you have suggestions, comments, you like it, you don't like it, who you want me to invite on the show. I don't care who it is. Tell me who you want me to invite, and I'll ask them. Guaranteed. All right. See you in 2 weeks.